most of their meetings, so I'm not going to speak for them, but I just want to make sure that we've got all three groups kind of covered, and that way when we get to the end of the cycle, when we're down into the weedy details, that we all had that expectation right now tonight. Okay, so can we just look through
B?
Yeah,
Could I invite
brought...
Michelle? We brought this.
Oh, great.
We sent it, Andrea, if I may.
Oh,
we
I
sent
saw
it
that.
electronically. We brought this, and if I could invite Jordan and Michelle up to the table.
Great.
They will be.
Thank you.
11-2.
Thank you, Patricia.
You're welcome.
Is this the max of that one?
Hello. Okay, so Jordan, we should have done it. Did we do introductions with you before?
We did
I'm mixing up like all my Facebook live meetings and.
We did a virtual one. There's a
that's right.
one of them
Okay.
where we were still doing remote meetings. So I had the pleasure of I think meeting most everyone.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jordan, you're the Director of Finance and Operations, correct?
Yep.
Is that the?
Correct.
Okay, and Michelle is, just for introductions and for folks at home, you're the chair of the budget subcommittee of the school committee.
Correct.
And you're a longtime school committee member. So
No, I'm not a long time.
You're not? You just seem,
No,
maybe it's
only
because
my
we're in.
second year.
Oh, okay. We're in.
I used to attend with Lois all the time as chair of the finance committee for Whitehall.
Oh, okay, okay. And then you and I are in other committees together too,
Yes.
so I'm mixing those up as well. Okay, and Raina, you're the chair. Do you want to kick everything off here in terms of what you guys are looking at for a calendar?
Sure.
And thanks for that.
So the subcommittee, the budget subcommittee has put together a draft calendar with sort of the milestones along the way, with our target of needing to approve the budget, I believe, in February. Yep. So we, and those deadlines are sort of, we get those through policy and also just the budget timelines from the state, and also needing to meet your requirements for getting it on for the warrants for the town meeting.
Right.
So, for all 4 towns.
Right.
So, you know, we've kind of mapped out various subcommittee meetings, and then when we would meet as a group to review the budget, the public hearings, to provide the community with information about the budget process and where our priorities and what we've come together with, and then an official public hearing, I think tentatively scheduled for February 9th, and then the school committee would meet on February 15th to vote on the budget. So.
Okay. And the public hearing is literally where people go and speak to the details that are in the budget.
Correct. The public can ask questions and provide comments.
Can they also do that at the, it says budget hearing number 1, 2, and 3 in January. Can they also do it there as well? Okay, leading up to the big, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so that's all in January. Okay, and then February 9th, February 15th, and then I'm looking at our calendar.
For the budget dates for the school, I'm gonna have to revise it because it's different, it's based on the
Right, but for us, Monday, and for, I should say for the Finance Committee, Monday, March 6th, the Finance Committee finalizes the town budget.
Okay.
Correct?
That's when we're backing it up. I mean, they could do it sooner than that, but when we're backing up the dates, that's
Okay.
kind of when it has to be done by the end. Yeah.
Okay. So that's normally when it happens, Lois, is at the beginning of March, is you're finalizing, the Finance Committee is finalizing the budget for Northfield, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then when we say PVRS budget certification to the town, is that just the standard formal email that indicates what the assessment is? And that's on March 15th. Okay,
No, I think that's when you have to get them, there's a letter that they send.
that's what I mean. It's
part of the-
it's a letter.
And it's part of the law. And
Part of the letter, yeah.
So that date comes out of that
Okay.
part of the process. Could come sooner, but I mean,
Right.
that's the
Cut
sort
off.
of date they have to have it
Yeah.
by.
Okay.
And that's the certification letter that says, this is your assessment.
Okay. So things wrap up basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the school committee in mid-February. And then things wrap up for the Northfield Finance Committee in early March. And then there's an expectation on the part of the Finance Committee to have the superintendent and the director of finance and operations, and I think we've done a joint meeting in the past, to kind of come full circle and say, okay, all of the big themes we heard tonight are now playing out in these specific details. But we're not necessarily meeting over the letter that's being sent. We're meeting over the understanding of how the big themes that we're talking about tonight translate into the details later on. I'm looking at the Finance Committee because I think last year there was some, and I know Patricia was new too, and we also had a change in school committee chairs. So it's always helpful to bring all the expectations and make them explicit a few months in advance, so then we're not sitting there at cross purposes in March in any way, shape, or form. So is there an expectation on the part of the Finance Committee to have Patricia and Jordan come back to the Finance Committee in between the February 15th and March 6th? Because that's a short window. Because you usually have also the Franklin County Tech Superintendent come with his presentation. So I'm just noting this for the group because then the select board will do a joint meeting with the Finance Committee at that point whenever they come back. But I'm looking at the Finance Committee to acknowledge you want PVRS to come between February 15th and March 6th.
I think they usually come during the February budget hearings because February 15th is their vote. So once the 15th
Oh,
happens,
good
it's
point.
done.
Okay. All right. That's why I'm
They know
talking out
sooner than
loud.
that.
Okay. So at what point, when we're looking at the calendar, at what point are you expecting before the 15th? Then? In February?
There's a whole list of budget meetings nobody's signed up for yet. They haven't broken them up by department. So it'll be, they've got the 6th as a budget meeting day. They've got the 9th, the 6th, the 5th, the 13th, the 27th. I think they start as early as January 23rd and 30th and January 9th. So they have a whole bunch of meetings in January and February for the Finance Committee budget hearings. We haven't scheduled anybody
Okay.
yet. Usually we send that out and town departments will tell you when they want to come, or Lois will invite them to a specific meeting
Okay.
when.
So this is great that I said it incorrectly because then I was corrected
Well,
live. No, but
Yeah.
live, I just want to, pardon my old project manager habits, I just want to make sure, so either Monday, February 6th, or Monday, February 13th, or Monday, February 20th, which is President's Day holiday.
Yeah, they have 3 meetings in January for budget hearings and
Right.
2 meetings in February for
Okay.
budget department hearings.
Okay, so I'm just going to look at the Finance Committee. Do you have any comments on the calendar and what you would like to see from PVRS in that time frame?
That's fine. Yeah, Andrea and I have communicated on this schedule, and yes, this is fine.
Usually we,
We'll work toward it, do what we can.
Yep, okay. But, so, I'm going to look now at the PVRS, so at Patricia and at Jordan, that, because I know that's a tight time frame, and I remember Michelle's talked about this before with all the budget hearings. Is there an expectation or preference to come back earlier in February, or? Thanks, Patricia.
I was trying to.
Okay, Help me out here.
Okay, so Jordan, let me just.
Or in January.
Well, I mean, I was just
looking
thinking
for
that
specifics.
if there's an anticipation of possibility of substantive change, I would think that, January 23rd or 30th might be more reasonable for everybody. Otherwise, if
Okay.
you push it really close to the vote date,
I agree.
it makes the document pretty much finalized, right? So
And it makes people get annoyed in a joint, which I've experienced in the last couple of years. So I'm looking
Yeah.
to avoid that, quite
I think
frankly.
it'd be more
Yeah.
substantive meeting if it was the January 23rd or 30th.
Okay, great. So shall we?
Can I say something?
Yes, of
And
course.
to that end, a reminder that those 3 hearings in January, the 9th, 17th, and 25th, and we staggered the
Ooh.
dates to accommodate
Yeah.
the different meeting dates of select boards and FinComs in the towns,
Yeah.
so that no one took the hit with, every Tuesday. Those meetings, while some information is given about the entire budget, those meetings tend to focus on chunks of the budget. So
Right.
first, second, third.
Right.
So if you were to wait until after the third meeting, you would have had the opportunity to ask questions and be engaged in all 3 chunks of the budget.
So it makes sense then to look at Monday the 30th then, right? For okay, that's. I feel like I'm back in my old job where like, all right, everybody, get your calendars out. Let's sync them up.
So what kind of, what meeting, will you say the name to that meeting?
It would be on the Finance Committee's agenda. They meet on Mondays, and then if needed, the Select Board can join them jointly on their night.
Those meetings
what we've done in the past.
January and the first 2 of February, they are the Finance Committee Department budget meetings.
Okay.
So they meet with all the departments in town along those different nights. They'll schedule them in.
Okay.
And I think you had one last year too.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Okay. And just a quick reminder for folks, so again, this document is available to you electronically
Yep.
online. These dates that you were reviewing, there's a link at the top of this document that says see legally required dates. If you click on that, it will bring you to a single-page document that cites the law, the regulations, the district agreement, and school committee policy relevant to budget dates.
Yeah, and I know that you've really made some inroads into making it easier to find stuff on the website too, so I appreciate that, especially going into the budget cycle. Okay, all right. I am marking for the record January 30th, Monday. We'll all be here again. Okay, great. Anything else, Michelle? Do you want to talk at all about your process? Or I know Lois sits in quite a bit.
Yeah. I don't know if she had any questions.
Lois, do you and the Finance Committee have any specific questions for Michelle's Budget Committee? I know you follow them closely.
I don't, but maybe some of our
Does anybody
members
else?
Not at this time, but I appreciate getting this information to us quicker. January 30th is a lot quicker than it was, so I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
we did have some challenges last year, I'll
Yeah.
admit,
I
but
understand that.
now we have some, Jordan can give us wonderful spreadsheets, or if we want a 1 to 3 year budget, we can ask for that, and we're making a lot of inroads this year compared
Yeah.
to last year.
Yeah. Well, this is good because that was one of the stumbling points, I think, in the last 2 years was getting to the end and just having different expectations and not being completely synced up on those key dates. So I really appreciate everyone's patience with that. Anything else on the calendar front?
Yes. The meeting on the 30th?
November
Oh,
30th.
you mean November 30th?
Yep.
Okay, the first meeting of that we will be inviting the Select Board and the Finance Committees will be on November 30th.
Oh,
And I will be sending an invite to all of you. We're meeting tomorrow evening, so the
Yep.
whole subcommittee hasn't talked about this yet. That's why I was a little hesitant.
Okay.
as to what the agenda will be. And that's why I haven't sent out an invite yet, but I
So
will
more
be.
to come after you do your meeting
Yes.
tomorrow night. Got
Yes,
it.
we
Okay.
have- yeah.
I'm sorry, B, what was the meeting on the 30th?
It's,
Michelle, do you want to say?
like a
Sorry, I didn't hear.
It's like inviting the community, a community meeting,
Oh.
inviting select boards and finance committees to our subcommittee meeting.
Okay,
And
thank
the
you.
budget subcommittee.
Yep.
Budget subcommittee, yes.
Mhm, Thank you.
So you're kind of, is it fair to say, Michelle, that you're kicking off the community portion with your subcommittee?
Yes.
Is that how you're looking? Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Just for folks at home too who are
Right.
interested.
Yeah, we're gonna try and make it collaborative
Mhm.
Great.
this year.
And all budget subcommittee meetings are, of course, public meetings, and
Right.
everyone is always welcome to attend.
But we're going to be marketing certain dates to make
That's
sure
right.
people really get an
Yes.
opportunity to dive into the financial cycle leading up to the town meeting, right? That's my goal for the year. My personal goal. Yeah, I'll be talking to everyone, at different stores, kind of like you when you're talking about people's background. Are you a teacher? I'll be in the grocery line at the mini mart asking folks whether or not they've seen any of our meetings and whether or not they're going to go. Okay, good. So we've got November 30th, we've got January 30th, and then the rest of the dates seem to make sense,
Right.
and we'll be in touch as things progress. Great. Thanks. Okay. Where's my orange?
On the bottom.
Oh, there it is, sorry. So I think we can say we've covered calendars and parallel processes. Any major themes that you want to, I know you announced the year of learning. Are there major themes that we should be looking for as the budget process kicks off?
Jordan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that, I think our big themes really are going to be focused on one, dealing with the Warwick departure, how that's going to impact the district's long-term fiscal outlook. So we're preparing for that. I think another big theme in the process will be the facilities master plan.
Yep.
Looking at all of our buildings and grounds and facilities and how we plan long-term for sustainability. And I think a third theme is strategic investments. How obviously with Warwick departure there's fiscal implications, but at the same time we want to be making smart investments. It's not simply about an amount of assessment is leaving, so we're thinking of cutting back costs. That's not our focus. Our focus is also making strategic investments into the future and strengthening the district, building upon the strengths that already exist. So I think those are three big areas that we'll be looking at throughout the process.
Okay.
But of course, we'll also be guided hugely by our budget subcommittee's priorities. So those are kind of administrative things that Patricia and I have spoken at length, but also the priorities of our subcommittee will guide the process. And I'm sure these collaborative meetings throughout, I think that although not a specific priority necessarily, I think the more collaborative process will drive our process more than it did last year. I wasn't part of it last year, but I hope getting here earlier and trying to be more collaborative, we'll have an opportunity to incorporate the needs and desires of the component towns as well, much earlier in the process.
Great. Questions from the select board or the finance committee? No?
No.
Okay.
Does that mean Warwick's a private school now? If they're not in the district?
No, so they're still part of the district.
They're still part of the
There's-
Pioneer Valley district?
They are.
Okay.
So I'll do a
Yeah, that
30
you
second,
mind, Bea?
30
I
second
just-
primer on it. Oh, no.
Are we done with major themes? Because we're going to slide right into Warwick separation agreement, so it could be a good segue.
What if I do a super quick primer on the Warwick transition process, and then maybe Jordan can talk about some of the numbers involved and implications?
Great.
Would that help?
Yeah.
So Warwick is one of our 4 district towns. Under the district agreement, Warwick has the right to leave the district, and that is a process that takes place between the school committee and the town. So I want to be clear, this is not something that the towns vote on. This is they have the right to leave if they meet certain requirements, one of which is paying off any debts that exist. And Warwick has paid off its portion of the state loan that we incurred in 2018 through the special legislation. They had a vote at town meeting. They've written us a check. We have written them a letter. Desi has seen the letter and said, yep, you paid off your portion. So there's been a sea change in the relationship between Warwick and the district. And it's a positive sea change. We are now working collaboratively and actually talking about ways that if Warwick does leave on July 1st, ways that we might stay engaged with each other and support each other. The founding superintendent came to my office a few weeks ago and we had a terrific first meeting. So if Warwick right now, we've the district the Warwick Transition Subcommittee, which Michelle also chairs.
Oh.
Michelle is at 4 night meetings this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just saying.
Competition bee.
Yeah.
Michelle's got me beat.
As is Jordan, as am I, like, you know, it's, we have a team going. That committee with the folks from Warwick have drafted 3 documents. The Warwick Transition Agreement, which describes how the divorce takes place. The Warwick Tuition Agreement describes how Warwick, which intends to set up a pre-K through 6 district up there in their beautiful little building. They're not going to run a middle or secondary school. They intend to tuition their kids back into Pioneer. So there is a tuition agreement. The 3rd agreement is the retiree cost participation agreement, and that describes how Warwick will fulfill its obligation to pay future costs associated with retirement and other post-employment benefits for employees who were with the district while Warwick was part of the district. And that got complicated. Again, we've been working collaboratively. Both sides have independent counsel, and counsel from both sides have worked well with each other. Jordan and I have been working with a team from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We had another meeting with them yesterday. They've provided, while both Warwick and the school committee have signed off on final versions, or temporarily final versions of the 3 documents, we sent them to Desi for review, and they're sending us some comments back. So those documents will need to go for a second round of approvals. I don't think anything major. So Warwick has to get approval from the commissioner by December 31st for their plan for their district. So they're working feverishly to get that, but that's them, that's not us.
Right.
Once the 3 documents have Desi's final approval, re-signed off by the town, and they get approval for their district, July 1st is the date. On July 1st, a switch is flipped. The kids from Warwick no longer belong to us. They belong to the Warwick, I don't remember the name. I don't think it's Warwick Public Schools. Warwick Community. The new school district. And the agreements go into effect. So that's kind of what will happen. Jordan will talk to you about the financial implications, which include we will lose the assessment from the town of Warwick, and we'll lose some other monies. But I don't want to steal your thunder.
Right.
Oh, Lois has a question.
Yeah.
This is something that took place prior to most of you being around, but has any thought been given to pay off that loan? There were some of your towns
Yes.
wanted it 5 years, and we were told that that Desi would not allow it to be 5 years, that it had to go 10 years, and that cost more in the way of interest for us, of course.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it comes up because of Warwick and paying their share. I don't know whether the towns would vote it or not, but that was questionable at that time. Has any
There has been thought, and great minds think alike, because Scott Adams, our treasurer, sent an email yesterday to Jordan and me asking about, should we pay this loan off more quickly? Jordan, I'm going to ask you in a minute to talk about the interest rate, because I believe the amount we pay is really low. It's a super low interest rate. We brought the question to our prior fiscal overseer, Rick Kingsley. His guidance was that we not ask the towns to support payoff of the loan early because the special legislation positions the outstanding nature of the loan as one of the reasons why the commissioner puts a fiscal overseer in place. If the loan is paid off, the commissioner still has the authority to keep a fiscal overseer in place. However, he could opt at that point, he could opt now, but he might say, okay, you don't have the loan. He could put a fiscal control board into place, and that board would have expanded powers over the district beyond what the fiscal overseer currently has. And I don't think any of us would want a fiscal control board to step in. So the prior fiscal overseer's guidance was don't do it, but that doesn't mean we couldn't ask for updated guidance from the current fiscal overseer.
Can you just clarify which or what loan we're talking about?
In 2018, special legislation was written to allow the state to make a loan to the district to help us pay off a debt that we incurred through our food services program over time that went undetected.
Okay.
I remember that.
Okay. Yes, all coming back. Okay.
Yeah, it all came back to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. And so it has, right now, in summary, it has a low interest rate, and there are definitely implications for paying it off.
Yes.
Anything else, Jordan, or do we just steal your thunder?
Well, no, I don't think it's stolen thunder. I mean, to Patricia's point, I think we'll consult with the current fiscal overseer. I mean, our treasurer, Lois's point was concerned about interest, and obviously the bond anticipation note that we renew each year. Yeah, I mean, the interest rate would be higher than it was. I mean, I'm sure everyone. On the news, right? Interest rates are much higher than they were a year ago. Yeah, we'll want to take a global view and see what are the positives and negatives of doing that. To Patricia's point, if the implication could be substantial in terms that a new board, that doesn't seem advantageous to avoid, relative to a fairly substantial budget, a small amount of interest, so we'll want to think about all of those possibilities. And I think speaking with our fiscal overseer, who's going to be here tomorrow, so it'll be an appropriate time to have that type of conversation, I think.
Okay.
But I have so much more thunder. Don't worry,
Go
thunder
ahead.
was not stolen. So yeah, I know next on the agenda, right, the Warwick transition. So we have a good overview of the what's happening, how it's going. Patricia's point, been very collaborative. A lot of people have been working very hard. I've come in the middle of the process, but people have been great. It's been good.
And the next key date is the December 31st, if I'm wrong. Okay.
Before then is the revision of the documents according to the updated guidance we get from DESI.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so I think that I'm sure people want to know what financial implications does this have in the district. So I think first and foremost, as Patricia mentioned, Warwick's assessments are not, if they leave on July 1st, they're not going to be assessed for the cost of operating the school, right? So now there's 3 towns. However, we're not going to see substantial immediate cost savings because a handful of students leave. So that I think has long-term planning implications. In addition, and so those assessments this year were $814,471. So not a small amount of money. In addition, our Chapter 70, because our foundation enrollment will decrease, we'll have less students for that. So we will receive less money because that's a per pupil calculation. So, that's another $169,780 that we will also lose. Of course, for the students that are tuition back, we have an increase in revenue. So I think that, without forcing people to do computation, certainly without a increase in the remaining towns' assessments, or a way to substantially reduce expenditures, there are conversations that need to happen, and implications for long-term planning. Because we no longer have those assessments, we have the reduction in Chapter 70, the amount of students that tuition back, the estimate is at a maximum it would be 17, but we have to be realistic. Some of those students could go to the tech school, right? So that those students wouldn't generate tuition revenue for the district. So there's a deficit there.
Do you, sorry to interrupt,
Of course.
do you put in like a working number or ballpark number in terms of the revenue from the tuition students?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm assuming 10 students.
Okay.
There's a maximum of 17. I think I would rather be safe.
Yep. Conservative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So and so right that would generate approximately $170,000 in additional revenue.
Okay,
But I think
so that still leaves a gap.
sure.
Yeah, if I'm doing my-
And I think it's important. Of course, the district is already far along in investigating. Well, okay, but what synergies do exist? What cost savings will exist as these students leave? So we have thoroughly investigated that. Have had in-depth conversations, and of course, taking the our goal would be let's not impact programmatic. Let's not, if possible, impact instruction. So doing that, there's still a gap, right? If you say, okay, let's eliminate the things that won't hurt our students, that won't hurt learning opportunities, we don't get there. So then the remaining question is, what assumption are we putting in for an increase in assessments?
Mhm.
And for my calculations, I think that I owe it to you all to say, okay, well, here's a starting point of what I think would make it so we would have minimal programmatic disruption at Northfield Elementary. And I think if we had a 7% increase for the initial year of Warwick's departure, that we could probably, with the cost savings, the maximum cost savings we could find, we could probably meet the challenge. It wouldn't be easy. It would take serious belt tightening on our part. But I think that's our responsibility to ask for the absolute minimum from the remaining members, but at the same time not impact the program that the students are receiving. So in our initial calculation, 7%, and that wouldn't be a consistent. I think it's important. It wouldn't be every single year from now on, because that's unsustainable. It would be a one-time, larger than previous year's increase to meet the unique challenge of having reduced assessments, while at the same time, as I think we all know, looking at the news, operating in an environment of pretty significant inflation and cost increases. So that that's one thing, is we're not, year over year, your district's not going to have a flat budget. Maybe 5 years ago you would have been, but right now in the current environment, there's a lot of costs. We buy fuel oil, we buy electricity. I think individual
Just by
homeowners know.
standing still, your
getting
budgets are going to go up. Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
and we have some. Is the facilities assessment plan? Why part of the reason we're doing the facilities master plan? We have some old buildings, right, that probably are not operating extremely efficiently, and there's things like fuel oil consumption or electricity consumption, just by virtue of being older buildings.
Yeah.
So those are the challenges we're looking at, and that's why, again, we want this to be a collaborative process, because now more than ever we need to be partners with the towns, because we're at a critical juncture in our long-term financial planning.
Well, I think just hearkening back to what I said earlier then, in talking about the major themes and then how these play out over the course of our parallel processes, and then when we connect back up, it'll be interesting to see how this is playing out. So while it's sobering information, I think it's information that we need.
Yeah.
And we need folks to understand now, way before getting into a town meeting. So I think this is helpful. Like I said, sobering but helpful. Are there questions from the select board or the finance committee? I just want to make sure. I know we need to move on to the auditor too at some point. So I'm just going, and we've got a couple other subjects. Is there anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm hiding behind him.
There you
Which is
go.
unusual for me.
I
A
know.
lot of people hide behind me.
I know.
But did you say the tuition agreement was similar to Vernon, when we had Vernon? Was Vernon's tuition income factored into the budgets for Pioneer before this?
Yes,
They were,
yes.
okay. And so we're talking about a tuition of roughly $10,000?
Oh, no, about 17.
Oh, 17.
And with the Warwick agreement, there's also specificity about students with special needs whose needs are require that the district hire extra people or do evaluations that we don't typically do. Warwick would pick up the cost for those.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question. Anything else? Oh, David.
So just in layman's terms, what's Warwick's end play in this? What's to prevent the next town from trying to do this? I mean, if they're gonna opt out and create their own district, and then they're gonna send their kids back there for tuition back, what's their long-term goal?
So saying this as someone who came in so late to the process, right? This was underway, they had voted, I'm sad about it. I wish we could have found a different way. I like a lot of what I hear about. My perspective as a new person is that town has a deep desire to keep their building open. They talk frequently about maybe 250 years of continuous schooling within Warwick. And the closure of that school was for them a knife to the heart.
Yeah.
And they have sought, therefore, any mechanisms that they could to open some kind of school. They're partnering with folks who investigate creative rural education across the country. Someone on their to-be school committee has got a fellowship to explore rural education. So their end game is they want their young kids educated in their town. That's their desire, that's their commitment. They're moving heaven and earth to make it happen. I'm not sure I know how to respond in terms of what would prevent the next town. I don't know that Leiden, for instance, Pearl Roads is a very different building.
Very different.
Warwick, I don't know if you've been up recently, but it's in great shape. They've maintained it. They have homeschool kids using it now. They do all kinds of programming there. They keep inviting me up for Tuesday lunches. Yeah.
Okay,
You're
great.
welcome.
Anything else?
I have a quick one.
Oh, hey.
Just what the implications of this control board, like, you have any more information on what sort of changes that would mean for the district? Like, what sort of things do they impose, and what,
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like it's a good thing, but you can elaborate on that.
When Rick talked with me last year, he was very clear. It's not something we want. I don't want to botch the answer. So what I'd like to do, Heath, is get the citation and send it to you.
Okay.
And maybe Andrea and
Yep.
you can share. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
That's helpful.
Can I follow up on that one, Keith? So the control board the potential of the control board only comes in if the note's paid off early?
No, I should be clear about that. There was a belief in the district that once we paid off the loan, the fiscal overseer would automatically be removed. We sought guidance. I didn't see that in the legislation. And my Julie Burke is nodding her head back there. So we sought guidance from the department, and they came back clearly stating, no. The commissioner may keep a fiscal overseer in place as long as they want. now Jordan and I have a collaborative relationship with the department. We meet every month with the associate commissioner and 2 folks who are specialists in regional finance. And I think they have faith in us as a team. Julie's nodding her head back there, Raina. We're transparent, we follow up, we listen to them, we take their advice, we bring them questions. And my guess is that Cammie Lamica, our current fiscal overseer, is sending positive reports back. They want our district to succeed. They want us to be on, have a healthy financial outlook, which means we need to have solid financial systems in place, and they're not gonna let go until they have evidence of that over time. We've got Jordan now, which is a total game changer for the district. So I think we're on a good road. I'd be interested to hear what you say, but I find the fiscal oversight really helpful. It's another set of experienced eyes watching what we do, and we have sought and received permission from the commissioner to allow the fiscal overseer actually to do some mentoring with Jordan as well. That was a line I didn't think we would be allowed. I was a little hesitant, but the commissioner came back saying, nope, we think you're on the right path. We think she can help. She is allowed to provide some guidance.
Bernie.
I have a question. The finance committee originally, when they did the fiscal overseer, was approximately $60,000 per year was appropriated to pay for the overseer. What is the current cost of the overseer now?
Oh my gosh, it's nothing close to that.
Yeah.
5,000?
No, I mean, so yeah, I think we have budgeted $15,000 this year.
She's $85 an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she bills monthly.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Anything else? We'll keep it moving. So district agreement update, then you had mentioned about the parallel processes and the burden of those too.
Yeah.
So is the district agreement, do you have a timeline that we should kind of file away in our heads?
We had
about?
a fantastic timeline.
I know
back
you
there,
did.
Melissa Gary, and we put it online, and we hoped
I
that we were
remember
going to
the
bring the towns
PowerPoint.
together. It was just too much. The Warwick, we're doing great with the Warwick work, but that has been consuming. So until Warwick is done and tied up, I just don't see how the district agreement picks up again. Let's say that we are able to pick it up in January. I don't think that we would be, Melissa, I don't think we would be ready, Michelle, for the towns to have it on for a vote this spring. No, I think it would have to be something that we collaboratively get ready for a vote by the towns in the spring of 2024.
Yeah, you want to have
Okay.
time with it.
Okay.
Yeah. And we want to get momentum going, right? Like we
Right.
don't want there was so much work that happened some years ago that then wasn't finalized. So once, like with Warwick, once we got going, we moved it. Once we get going with the district agreement again, we'll move it, but I don't see how it happens in time for this spring's town meetings.
Right.
Okay, so that's helpful then, because I mean that's what we're always, when we're looking at the calendars, is all of the different things that need to happen before we get to May.
Yeah.
So so we'll just reset that for next May then. The 2024 as opposed to 2023. Okay. That's helpful. Okay, so on to school resource officer and memorandum of understanding on that. I know that the MOU comes up at the end of 2023, if I remember, June 30th, I think. So,
Yeah, so in terms of planning with that, we have we're anticipating several new members of the school committee, and formation of the budget process. We're kind of looking at what our reorganizing and also just kind of setting our goals and priorities for the coming years, not just this coming year, but longer term. And so we need to have a conversation with the new committee about where the school resource officer fits into those priorities.
right, so from a calendar
goals.
standpoint, you, so we're used to being elected in May. You just got reelected in
November.
November. Congratulations. So
Thank you.
your next meeting is as you're reorganizing, it's coming
We're
up.
laughing because
Yeah.
this has been such a
Challenge.
complicated,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, one of the things that is
Uh,
thrown a curve on it is the fact that in order to certify the election, we have actually until November 23rd, because I have to wait for any postmark mail to come back in as postmark before the 8th has to be accounted for. Anything overseas has to be accounted for. Any provisional ballots that we have to do any kind of research has to be accounted for, and there's certain dates to that. Pretty much the date to look at right now is the 18th, at least in my town, because I don't have any overseas. So I probably can start certifying, or at least give the figures back to the school committee, probably Thursday, PM. I'll have the last 3 ballots cast that I have, so.
Okay.
And I think the other towns are in the same position as far as doing that, so. And I think Bernardston will probably be in the same boat. I'll be able to tell you about Leiden because I can talk to the person that's going to be doing that too. So she's arranging for that to happen. But the thing is, we have to post, which is here posted, that the ballots are going to be counted on Thursday. And
Okay.
that would be added to the count.
And you're
So-
you're meeting.
So we're meeting Thursday evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after getting advice from council, what our plan is for this Thursday is for members that were on the committee as of election day, November 8th, will be meeting and doing whatever business needs to be conducted at Thursday's meeting. And then our meeting in December will be reorganization with the newly elected and newly sworn in members.
Gotcha. Okay. So do you want to talk about how do you foresee the SRO and the MOU process working after you guys are all organized?
Right. So I think we'll be, once we're reorganized in December, we'll plan for setting some goals and priorities with the new committee members' input, and integrating that also into the budget process of how as the subcommittee is continuing their planning and setting priorities for the budget.
Okay.
B.
Question.
Do you want a school resource officer in your school system?
I think I don't think that that's an easy question to answer. I mean, I think that I don't think anyone doesn't want a school resource officer. I think that there are lots of competing priorities within the school district and within our budgeting.
Is it a budget thing, or is it a social problem or policy problem?
I think it's.
What's the problem?
I think it's primarily a budget problem.
Budget problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bernie.
I have a question. So right now, currently, you have no SRO whatsoever, is that correct?
that's correct.
And you had appropriated money in your budget to cover that cost,
Yes.
correct? So you're not expending any funds.
Yes.
So then the police department receives no aid for any position that's currently held by that, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and for the record, we just hired a police officer approximately a month ago, and he's attending SRO training this week. So just FYI.
Well, is he training specifically to go to Pioneer?
No, he's training.
Training.
There's certain.
Because I was under the assumption that that police officer was going to be the new SRO up at Pioneer.
Right, that's your assumption, and what the process is.
This is why you don't assume. I don't know why I got that in my
No,
head,
this is
though.
fine, Mary, because
Yeah.
you know when you ask
And I don't
these
mean to hold
questions-
everybody up. I
No,
don't know
no,
why I thought that.
I think it's worth restating. So the process was to go through the hiring process,
Right.
which are 2 steps. So
Yep.
the screening, hiring.
Mhm.
With the police, there's a third one called the lateral transfer,
Right.
which allows any eligible officer who's interested
Okay, yeah.
to quote unquote lateral transfer. Now, we're not
Yeah.
looking at a large pool of
No,
officers in Northfield.
Right, yeah.
So that's why you would make that assumption.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And
we
that's
were
also
doing.
why he's following his interest, and that's also why he and the chief agreed that the training makes sense, right? So as we've moved through our process, and as you move through your process, then assuming he's still interested and he's the candidate, and we would do interviews at that point in time, then he'd be ready to go. Right,
Okay.
that's our goal on the Northfield side.
Yeah, I
Bernie?
remember that we talked, when I asked him about that, and he said, depending on what the guidelines were gonna be, what was expected of the SRO, what the MOU would be, but that he mentioned he would be interested in it if the conditions were right.
Okay, good.
Had another conversation.
So just from a parallel process standpoint, do you see this going through a particular, I know you have a deep subcommittee structure. Now, having sat through a couple of meetings, I'm aware of how large the committee is and how your work is done differently, and it's done through the subcommittees. So do you see a particular subcommittee tackling this, the MOU or you see it going through the budget process and possibly another? I'm just curious what your thoughts might be.
So I think most of the MOUs pass through the Curriculum and Personnel Committee, or Subcommittee, and so I think they would be largely responsible for drafting the MOU.
Okay.
And that would be brought back to the larger committee, and then certainly the Budget Subcommittee would be advising on the financial piece of that position.
So,
Alex?
yeah, so who's going to be signing this MOU? Because the way I always understood the law is that it happens in consultation between the police chief and the superintendent of the district. So who's going to be signing this document, and what role do those people think they're going to be playing in it?
I think you're right. My understanding of the model SRO contract is that it is signed by the superintendent and the police chief and the select board, I thought. Am I right about that? That there are 3 signatures? I could be wrong. So I take my marching orders from the school committee.
Okay.
And the school committee has said that, remember, 9 open seats on a 12-member board. 9 open seats on a 12-member board. So there's, let's see what happens once everything is certified and Joanna's tabulated the results. And
Did you hear that, Northfield?
Yeah,
Okay.
just looking at the document right here, Pat, the superintendent, school committee chair of the board, and then of course the town clerk has to certify it.
Is that the prior document?
No, this is the current one that
Yeah,
expires in June.
Sorry, the current one. So I don't know what the model is. The model document from the state. That's not the model document from the state.
I could tell you that.
Okay.
Whether it's based on that or not, I don't know.
Right.
So Alex, to the question of what do I think about it? I take my marching orders from the school committee.
That's smart right there. You see, appointed officials answer to their elected officials, and I think that what I'm seeing here is that we have an uncertain future with this position as a result of the fact that there's so many open seats on the school committee, so it's kind of hard to tell. I know as this select board has, myself, I won't speak for you folks, have encouraged and in a way pressured Chief John Hall to be proactive in crafting this position correctly. And I only hope that when the new school committee members come on and other avenues play with that we see a similar system of pressure and policy to be placed on the superintendent to move this position forward. Because if they don't, Pat's right, she has to answer to the school committee, and that's where I'm kind of concerned, because if the school committee is anti-police, anti-SRO, whatever, they don't want to spend the money, then Patricia has to answer to that. Otherwise, that's kind of being insubordinate, and that's not good. So I only hope that we have an SRO school committee coming up that will be in favor of keeping a law enforcement figure to train and educate and, unite the students. It's a big position.
Well, I think what's helpful, Alex, is you're basically pointing out how people can weigh in. And I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a parallel process standpoint, because I know that, I think what would be useful from a the superintendent, the school committee chair, and myself, and the town administrator, and the police chief have kept the lines of communication open. As a project manager, I would like to see things moving through the school committee parallel process faster, but it's not my purview. It's just my preference. And but I think what we can do as you set your priorities and you set your calendar, and as people fill in and get used to like which subcommittees and how they're going to do it, it would be nice to circle back as we're doing on the major financial themes, is to circle back on this. Because I know it has raised some questions, and what we've said before is we as a select board have had to get up to speed on public safety because of the building, but also we replaced our longtime retired police chief. Mm-hmm. And also we had police reform in Massachusetts. So this board, and we've been together now for a while, because Mary's been on here for 2 years, so public safety and police policies, the SRO, have been front and center in our priority list for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're feeling we want to share the love over there.
So, and B, thank you for saying that. And in terms of sharing the love, I want to make sure that the board, FinCom, and our community understands that the development of the SRO position is by far not the only relationship we have with law enforcement.
Right.
So Jordan participated recently in a meeting, and he can be kind of funny about it, where we had law enforcement and fire chiefs from all of our towns in my office for hours pulling apart our emergency planning. They're coming back again on Thursday morning. John Hall, Bob High and Jim Carmichael were at Pioneer today for the first safety training of the year. They'll be at NES and BES in the coming weeks. So I don't know where this notion, but I've heard it, and frankly it's unfortunate, and I wish that folks had stopped it in its tracks. Something about anti-police. That was an unfair aspersion, and I really wish that one of you had stopped people in meetings and said, on what evidence are you basing a comment like that? What I have heard from some of our safety partners is that they have never had a superintendent who came into the district, called them up, and said, will you please come and talk to us, which I did with every police chief and every fire chief. Again, we've got folks around the table in a way that has not happened in anybody's memory. So let's all remember, the SRO is one aspect of possible law enforcement relationship with the district. We have quite a healthy thing going in terms of developing, nurturing, maintaining relationships with all of our safety personnel, and in particular, updating our emergency evacuation plans in a way which I predict will be copied by other districts. I think our document will be superior to the 6 or so from other districts that we have been reviewing. So just want to share that.
And if I can just add, sorry.
No, hold on. So just from a parallel process standpoint, so I appreciate the statement and the clarification. I think this has been a long time in coming. It's getting all of these groups together. What I would like to know and ask the school committee and the superintendent is, it's a priority for us, and it affects our budget, and it affects our staffing. And public safety staffing with respect to police, as I've described on multiple occasions, is no small task to recruit. It's similar to recruiting math teachers, I would gather. There are few and far between in terms of experience. We're really lucky to have had a very experienced officer come on board, but it wasn't a wide pool of people to pick from either. So we have a long lead time in that respect, and for strategic personnel and planning, I would like to find a way where we can connect the processes occasionally so that we can share that information. And for those of us who are interested in public safety, because there are roles to play in a community. And this is one thing we're going to be addressing on the select board too, is there's roles for select board members to play in emergencies. That doesn't affect the school, but just to put that out there. There's parallel processes, but I want to make sure there's real connections that result in some actions and dialogue and collaboration. So let me just say that. And Heath, go ahead.
So I'm glad to hear that they're starting to come up there for some emergency planning and everything. You know, having an open relationship with them and getting the higher ups up there is great. It doesn't compare with having an officer in the school 5 days a week. You know, so I'd be interested to hear, because Raina, you said that there's competing priorities. The health and safety of our kids in that school district should be number one. So I'm interested to hear, what are those competing priorities?
I mean, teachers, heating the building. I mean, all of the things that come up in our budget lines. I mean, where do we take from to pay for, how do we pay for the teachers' salary increases? How do we pay for a math teacher? How do we pay for principals? I mean, I think that it's a complicated budget, and there's a lot of pieces to it. And, we don't have a lot of ways to raise funds. So that I think those are the competing priorities that I'm talking about.
So fiscal. When you say priorities, it's fiscal priorities that are in competition.
Absolutely. And are there, is there value to having an SRO in the building at 5 days a week? I absolutely agree that there is value. In terms of, is that more valuable than some of the other things that we have to pay for? I think that's a larger conversation. And those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about when we think about the position. To hear Warwick is leaving, and we don't know how we're going to be able to continue all of our current programming, and to think about this other position that we haven't been paying this year. Are we going to set aside money for that position over some other program that we're currently running? I think that's those are the things that we're thinking about. That's what makes it a hard decision.
So the second part of that question then is, if Northfield were willing to float the entire bill for that position, would it be a no questions asked type of thing to have it in the school system?
I think, I mean, personally, I would say yes. I can't speak for every member of the school committee, but I wouldn't anticipate that would be a problem.
Okay.
Something to consider.
Yeah, so let's, I think this is helpful, because let's figure out what the problems are and what's holding people back. Because the particular person and the personnel and the Northfield priority is that it's important, and we're looking at the way we structure the police department around it. So I think this is helpful, and I want to circle back as we get into like November 30th and some of the other budget. To me, this would be one of those major themes that, how do we solve it? Right, and if we need to take, and that's why we go to town meetings, is so we ask for people's support on whatever we come up with. And anyway, so I want to make sure, I want a commitment from this group to really make those connections in the parallel process on these particular major themes. And so then when we get to the end of this process, and we're looking at the warrant, and the finance committee is wrapping things up, we know how it's playing out. We know what the solutions are, because we're talking about the major themes now, and what are the solutions at the end of that cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate the really open discussion,
And can I just make a quick statement? 2 seconds.
Does it add anything new to the discussion?
It does.
Okay.
To Patricia, I just want.
So to the larger group.
Thank you.
The community. Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to understand all the detailed work that everybody's doing up, in the district, in order to have a very well organized and well processed safety environment, you know? And although I hate that the label anti-police has been put up or describe the school,
Let's
I'm
clarify
positive that any rational citizen and parents know otherwise, because that school is not anti-police, to say the least.
I
hate that label.
Well, I think we're not anti-police, and if that's come up in discussion, questioning, I think what we're trying to get to the bottom of is, and what you've clarified through Heath's question is, it's fiscal.
Yeah.
And it's you setting your priorities, and you're on a different schedule and timeline and governance structure than we are. So we're here to help, and we're here to connect, like I said, on those themes. And I think if we're focused in on the fiscal part of it, I think the rest of it I think we should just all agree with the community here and at large that we're dropping that portion of the discussion. Okay. Right?
Thank you.
That label.
And in terms
that
of
label
fiscal,
is.
Heath, and student safety and fiscal upcoming conversations, we are possibly going to be bringing to the subcommittee and therefore to the towns questions about is it time to take on the capital improvements for safety, in particular at Pioneer, related to cameras, key card access. Those would be major expenses. So we're thinking globally about student safety.
The entry.
Probably wouldn't come to you for that, for the elementary schools at this point, because we need to do the facilities assessment plan. But Pioneer is the district building. That's not going anywhere. So just want to make clear, there may be other ideas that will involve money and student safety that we ask for conversation about.
Okay, so good point. It's not, like you said before, it's not just the SRO, and all of these things
We are thinking
cost
locally.
money. So one of the major themes that we'll come back to is not just the SRO, but any safety expenses that need to be undertaken. And I would include in that, the use of town personnel, right? I don't know if that's an appropriate indirect cost, not appropriate, but I don't know if that's the appropriate label for it, but.
Like a town police officer?
Right, that we're providing resources, right, by virtue of the building exists in Northfield, and our police chief is involved in the safety even if we don't have an SRO, the town is providing, right? So anyway, I just want to note that, and let's connect on that major theme again. 20 we still have to do the audit.
The NES lease?
Yeah, quickly.
Super quick?
Yeah, I think you and Andrea and I have had some conversations and some emails, so if there's an update here, that would be great.
And I think maybe I missed an email. So thank you, Andrea, for the suggestion. Well, why don't you have your lawyer draft something? So our lawyer, the district's lawyer, has drafted something. So for other folks, Jim Trell has got fabulous staff who want to get the kids outside more and into the property. We're looking at trying to expand our outdoor learning in all the buildings, and that will come up in the budget conversation about how we might do that.
Oh, good.
I didn't realize until recently that the town owns the entire parcel, 12.5 acre parcel, on which NES stands. So we currently lease, the district leases 3.65 acres or so.
Yep.
And that acreage actually doesn't even include all of what is now the ball fields and grassy area. So we approached the town and said, gosh, how would we go about asking permission to start doing a little bit of a trail this fall? Conversation. Our attorney has drafted an addendum to the current NES lease. And really the only thing that it would do is change the boundaries of the leased property. I haven't sent it to you for review because Buildings and Grounds needs to be the first subcommittee that has a crack at it. I'm thinking if Buildings and Grounds reviews it and were to recommend, maybe it could go simultaneously to the town and to school committee for initial review. So all of the rest of the lease would remain intact and unchanged. The only difference would be, again, instead of leasing the 3.5 acres that are, there's that lease mortgage type language that describes the boundaries.
Right.
That would possibly, we would ask that change to include the 12.5 acre parcel. With the idea being that over the next 5 years or so, we would, with the town's blessing and working with conservation, working with open space, etc., we would begin using all of the 12.5 acres for educational purposes, while maintaining there is an easement for public access on the side of the property, the north boundary of the property. So,
Okay. So I think given the original approach, I think I'm always looking ahead in terms of select board meetings and noticing how Rena and I are on different schedules. So I think the key thing that I noted on one of the email threads was we just need to sync up. If the lawyers are all okay, is like which select board meeting it gets signed at which school committee, because we're on slightly opposite nights.
I have one quick question on
Yes.
this. So I
Dan.
think the town maintains the ball fields and that, mows them, that sort of thing. So now if we release that, does now the school take that initiative and maintain?
So the way that our attorney drafted the addendum, the lease and things like who maintains what remains intact. The only thing that would change is the extent of the property that we lease. So whoever is plowing whatever, so we do the sidewalks, you plow the parking lot, that remains the same. The responsibility to maintain the interior of the building in good operating condition, that remains the same.
On ball fields.
Whatever the agreement is
So-
currently for the ball fields would remain the same.
I'm looking at the time, so this is going to have to come up because we have to sign at the select board, and we probably should, out of courtesy and keeping in touch with the FinCom, we can certainly go over the details then. I don't want to get into too much detail tonight, other than I think we just need to work out getting the school committee version back, and then we'll have our lawyer do it, because I think that's where we started, was with our lawyer, and it wasn't working for the school lawyer. So that said, then it's just Rena and I kind of looking at our agendas and going, all right, if you've got November 15th, I've got November 16th or 18th or whatever. So, and then we can put it back on and talk at length about specific details, if that's okay. I'm just looking at time, and we're going to do the audit, so.
Okay.
And we've had him, thank you for waiting for a long, long time.
Thank you, Heath. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Let's do this again.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and I'm assuming thank you. So, Finance Committee, more fun. You're going to sit through the auditor report? Or okay. Finance Committee, what's your, are you?
They're
Okay.
discussing it.
Yep, I know. I'm asking out loud for the
Do you want to
camera.
have more review of ourselves before we do that? I mean, we have it right here.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay here for the whole thing?
Yes, I think we should.
Okay.
Great. Let's move on to the auditor. Thank you for sitting through. We're trying, as you know, we're trying to get through quite a bit before the end of the year. So,
And I can just give a little introduction.
yes, please.
This process started a couple of years ago when I noticed when I started that you hadn't had an audit since 2011.
Oops.
And then you wanted to build a building.
All before our time.
And you want to build a building which was going to require audited financial statements for bonding. So that was a huge thing. So we did do the first audit. I think it was a 2019 audit. I don't have that one in front of me right now. That was the first one, and then of course COVID hit, and then also we had a changeover in our accountant position, and we also so we decided to put it off and kind of do a look back. We have been funding annual, and I'm recommending that we continue to fund it annually. In fact, including maybe putting it in the accountant's budget and taking it out of a special article, because I think you're looking at long-term audited statements if you're going to be bonding and borrowing anyway. So it's not really a annual thing. It's not a article anymore. It's really going to be an annual expense. Having said that, we reached out and started working with Scanlon and Associates, and Jeff Gendron is here tonight. He's an audit manager at Scanlon and Associates. What you'll get is the financial statements, which are, if you're a numbers person, that's really where you're interested. But for most of us, myself, it's the management letter that really pertains to the points that want to be pointed out, and lead the myself and my financial team, which is the treasurer collector, our financial person, the accountant, and the assessors, kind of guides us going forward. And so with no further ado, I will introduce Jeff to kind of take you through what these things mean and the process that they entertain, and then you can ask him questions.
Just one quick point, Andre, I think for context, the year of the audit is from FY22 then? That we're going to be talking about?
No,
21 to 22?
21.
Right.
Is that
22 just closed in June, and we just actually put in the statement to the DOR like a few weeks ago, so it would be premature to have actually a 22 audit.
Oh, sorry. Okay, but I just want to point out. So we were just talking
in
about
calendar 22, but it's fiscal 21 through June.
that's fiscal 21, and we were just talking about, in terms of the budget, we were talking about FY24. So we're doing a span of a few years here. So it's
Yes.
worth noting we're looking backwards with the audit as
Yes.
opposed to forward with the budget. Okay,
Yes.
Go ahead. Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you, Andrea and the board. As Andrea said, my name's Jeff Gendron. I work for Scanlon Associates, and we're here to discuss the audit results of the FY21 audit. So the first thing is, what's the point of an audit? And the point of the audit is to give an opinion on the financial statements. The basic financial statements are these big reports, about 70 pages long. Got some great reading if you have time on your hands. How do we come about giving an opinion on this audit report? So the first thing is that we have an analytical approach that we go through, and we compare prior years. Even though if we didn't do the audit last in FY20, we look at your financial statements that are internally produced, do some comparisons, we compare the budgets, and ultimately, what are your biggest assets and your revenues that the town has? And the departments that are really in charge of those and generating those are your treasurer's department, that handles all your cash and investments, and your collector's department, which handles your receivables and all your tax revenue. So that's where we, mainly concentrate. We start there, we kind of work our way outwards. We give those departments and some of your other financial departments, the assessors, we give them internal control procedures questionnaire that they fill out. After they fill it out to us, sometimes now we get them electronically sent to us, and we can review them even before we step into town hall. We look at the answers, we see what they replied, and then when we come to do the audit, we'll test to make sure that what they say they're doing, they're actually doing. What they are doing is in compliance with Mass General Law and best practices. So besides the Treasurer and Collector's Office, we review some of your other accounts, special revenue, grants, etc. And I know we looked at the police department, their grants, and the off-duty account. We also looked at the highway department, specifically the Chapter 90 program. And from there, Tom, and the firm gave an opinion. It's on page 3 and 4 of the audit report.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that at the bottom. And it's an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. That's the best opinion you can have. And it kind of goes at the very end of page 3. It says, there's a bold face that says opinion. And then it continues on to page 4. And then after talking to Tom, I was going to start off with the management letter, which is a much smaller report, about 10 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be, which a lot of people like to, go over that more thoroughly. And then I will go over some highlights of the financial report later. So the big thing with a management letter is a review of your internal control. And during the audit, there were 2 significant deficiencies that were found. And that's where we kind of like to, focus this report and discussion of this report. And the first one is the cash and investment reconciliation procedures. So during the audit, when we tested those procedures from the treasurer's office, we found that they were lacking.
So Jeff, just so we're all on the same
sorry.
page, you're on page 5 of the management letter?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So finding 2021-1 cash and investment reconciliation procedures. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks.
Correct. And the 2 bullet points is what kind of explains the highlights of that finding. The main things really are on that first bullet point. There's a variance that existed between the treasurer's records and the collector's treasurer's record and the accountant's general ledger.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second bullet point, which says that there wasn't a complete and accurate cash book being utilized for the whole year. And that also, it was a partial cash book, and that individual bank statement reconciliations were not being properly maintained.
Okay, and I'm just noting this is before we did our policies and procedures, right? As we look down under perspective information, we've indicated there was a change in personnel and policy and procedure.
Right, once they go through the comments and they give the information, then the perspective information is actually our reply from the town. I meet with my finance team to look at all of their findings, and then we discuss, what we know, what we see, and I go back and forth with the auditor. Sometimes we actually provide them information that they either missed or didn't see, and other times we get clarification on some of the things that they've said so that we can make sure that we're responding appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
So we were well aware that we had some issues, but we have a new team, we have a new treasurer, and we have new accountants. So we feel that was going to show in 21 because the changeover in personnel all happened in that fiscal year, end of 20 into 21. And so there was a lot of catch up that had to occur, including new procedures reconciling cash and a new cash book, which is now in consistent use. And was also at the same time that we were doing our new policies and procedures. So there's a whole bunch of new policies and procedures that the finance committee and the team that worked on that process have voted, and the select board have accepted as well. So, and we've worked very closely with our accountant, and our treasurer and accountant have established some much more timely reconciliation, and that's been a major goal for us.
Excellent.
To get these. Part of the problem is that it just wasn't being reconciled fast enough. I mean, ultimately you have to reconcile to some degree or another in the end, otherwise DOR is going to catch it, but you don't want to find it 5 months later. It's just hard to track that way. You want to reconcile faster so that if anything comes up and it's spotted, you're only looking back a month or 2 as opposed to trying to figure out what happened 5 months ago. And so there was a gap in time, we had a change of personnel, and we had some other prior issues we were carrying, including a change in the software. And so that all had to get caught up, and it had to get caught up this year. That was a priority to us.
So we're not,
Bernie?
So we're not gonna be having these problems anymore, hopefully. I mean, you know I balance my checkbook monthly. You would think the accountant would reconcile this, you know, every month. I would hope.
Right, and part of the issue we have is that we have to consider, and the finance committee will be hearing this from me. We don't give our treasurer enough time.
Yeah.
We have a part-time treasurer collector. She's doing both jobs at 28 hours a week. It's going to be my recommendation that she works a full-time job. It's just she's running out of time.
I did read that.
Yeah, she's just simply running out of time. Now, having said that, she also walked into a process where the cash book was not as. It's not that it wasn't bad. It was badly kept. It wasn't as modern as some of the procedures now. So we've switched over to some of the more generally recognized, acceptable, newer processes. And in so doing that, it will allow us to coordinate a lot more of these things sooner, to meet with the accountant and reconcile these much faster.
And you mentioned we're going to be doing another audit this next year.
Yeah, we have to do a 22, so that's where we're hoping to get a back catch on us.
So we're keeping an eye on it. We're going to make sure we don't have the same problems again.
Yes.
Yeah, and to your point, Bernie, if we don't do audits, we're not going to find the deficiencies in order to address them. So I think I'm kind of laughing, but it's like, okay, well, we shouldn't be surprised that we are actually listening to Jeff tell us about deficiencies and what we need to do next. But they look doable, and and we also put in financial policies and procedures back earlier this year in 2022. So there's quite a bit that we've changed since.
There is, and we don't see it as an adversarial thing to have an audit. We see it as the way to catch these things and to support. I see it as a way to support the financial team. When these things get caught, we sit and we say, okay, we didn't notice this, or we didn't see this, or this wasn't being done right, or do we need a better tool? Do we need a better instrument? Do we need better software? Do we need more time? Do we need, what is it that has kept us or is keeping us from doing these things the way we think that the auditor would like it done and the way that we want to get it done, so that it's appropriate, proper, and going forward. So we have a great audit team who like to work with us. They're available. We can call them and ask questions and get comments. Their job isn't just done. Once you finish the audit, they don't say, see you next year. They're a constant, they're part of our cash management process. So we feel very
So it's another
strong.
Pair of eyes.
It is, and it's a very strong team that we can reach out to for guidance as well.
Okay, so do you want to move on to the next deficiency? Oh, Mary, I'm sorry.
Just in regarding to all of these deficiencies and comments from the auditor, all the new policies and procedures and staff that have been put into place since things were not really, nobody was really watching what the other hand was doing, have all the comments that they have here in deficiencies, have these been taken care of since the company wrote up this audit and that it's coming to us? Or
it's a yes and no. It's because they're a process. It's a question of spotting them, seeing them, recognizing them, and working on them. So the fact that yes, we can catch up, but it takes once